Parkinson's disorder is a degenerative disorder of the brain that leads to shaking and difficulty in walking, movement, and coordination. It first shows up in ancient Indian medical texts where it's referred to as Kampavada. Then in the West around 175 AD, the Greek physician Galen named the disorder shaking palsy. No significant research was done until the 1800s when English doctor James Parkinson took an interest in the disorder. In 1817 he published his work, which he titled An Essay on the Shaking Palsy. 60 years after the publication of Parkinson's essay, it was read by Jean-Martin Charcot, who realized the significance of Parkinson's research and named the disorder after him. No new research was found until the 1960s when it was discovered that patients with Parkinson's had lower levels of dopamine, a neurotransmitter involved in motor control. This causes the thalamus and an area called the globus pallidus to become overactive, which causes the tremors commonly associated with Parkinson's. Other symptoms include difficulty swallowing, problems with balance, movement, and walking, drooling, hallucinations, loss of fine motor skills, and rigid or stiff muscles. Treatment includes medication, rehabilitation therapy, and a variety of surgeries, including deep brain stimulation, a thalamotomy, which is the destruction of part of the thalamus using liquid nitrogen, or a pallidotomy, which is the destruction of the globus pallidus using liquid nitrogen. This is Shirley. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's disorder 12 years ago. Here she discusses her experiences living with the disorder, including a symptom called freezing, a temporary involuntary inability to move.
I was diagnosed about 12 years ago, but figured out after going to the neurologist that I probably had the disease for a longer period of time. The very first thing that most people realize that there's something wrong is the shaking. If they don't shake, then it's a longer period of time before they're diagnosed. But there are a lot of things like the freezing that I'd had for a long period of time and didn't realize that it was part of Parkinson's. It was unnerving. It took 3 years before I got around to doing any. I went to the neurologist and everything, but didn't do anything as far as living was concerned. And then decided that I needed to make sure that I was in a position that I would be taken care of. Like I said, the big thing was the shaking, but I had the freezing a lot and had problems with handwriting and that kind of stuff and spilling stuff all over me when I eat. I've basically taken only 2 or 3 medications. I take vitamin E because that's one of the things that they use to help control the freezing and a few other things. I take pramipexole because that's a medication that my doctor feels stops the shaking a lot. The other one is Stalevo, and Stalevo is 3 different drugs that control the loss of dopamine. Now, what Parkinson's is your brain works on dopamine that is produced in your brain, and it stops producing it. And when it stops producing it, that's when you start experiencing. Now, in the beginning, it's just slowing down, but then they disappear. Now, I've never been through any of the operations in which they try to replace them. But if you get to the point where you're really having a problem, they will go in and they implant a dopamine producer, okay, to help produce dopamine within your system. My Stalevo puts it back as much as possible through taking the medication. Those are the 3 things that I take specifically for the Parkinson's, but there are others, all kinds of them. I have started drooling, and I drool to the point, if I ignore the water coming out of my mouth, it gets all under here and so forth. The doctor said that he had 2 ways of getting rid of the dopamine drip. One of them would be to take shots and insert this medication in the glands under your chin to stop the flow of water out of the glands. But there is a medication that I'm going to try first. But that doesn't work like the shot does, and we'll see. Probably in the future I'll probably go with the shot.